It's podcast. You're listening to Gorehead and The Wiener. Hello, everybody. Hello, welcome to a classic episode of Gorehead and The Wiener, where today we are talking about
Hellraiser 2, Hellbound, one of the many sequels to Hellraiser, and it shares the trademark quality of being a giant pile of garbage. I didn't expect... I always knew that the Hellraiser sequels were, like, infamously bad. I just didn't realize that they immediately got bad.
Well, yeah, because for Hellraiser 2... it was shot almost immediately after the first Hellraiser, and they actually had
during post-production of the first movie.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was greenlit by Clive Barker. I can't imagine he wanted anything to do with this movie, but the actress who plays Kirsty, she was written into a contract where she had to play her part in the second Hellraiser. So I kind of assumed, okay, well, it has to at least be kind of good, but it's not. It's terrible.
It's not.
They reuse so much of the gore from the first one to the point where it's like, okay, you guys clearly didn't want to put any effort into the second one, and you're just riding off of the popularity of the first one.
It was.
Which I don't know how popular it was, to be honest, when it came out. The first Hellraiser.
Yeah, I think in the horror community, it was quite popular. It was like very shocking, and I think the special effects for the time were pretty, impressive. And I doing a little research into it. We'll get into it later. But I think the reason why we see so much footage from the first one is they had a lot of budget constraints, and I think this is a movie that had a lot of big ideas that it wanted to present and did not have the finances to present it in the way they wanted to. I feel like this is a tragic tale of not being able to stick the landing. Like, they had a lot of lofty ideas, and none of that translated onto screen.
Yeah. Oh my god. Yeah, we'll get into it. So before I get into the gore summary and the gore rating, do you have a podcast intro, Chris?
I do have a podcast intro. So, let me just dive right in here. All right. From the director of Power Rangers in Space, Dark Spectre Part 1 and 2, comes the sequel to one of the most unsettling horror movies of the 80s, Hellraiser 2, Hellbound. Imagines a haunting vision of hell constructed out of 3 papier-mâché hallways and a single matte painting, which our heroines will be forced to run through over and over and over again. Things will happen for 1 hour and 37 minutes, and then it ends.
Beautiful.
Fuck this movie. It's so lame.
It's so stupid.
Oh, so disappointed. This crap.
So it's still gory. So,
yeah, but it doesn't even stick with you. It's like,
no.
Like the first movie, it nailed. Clive Barker was able to harness this filthiness of it. Where the whole movie made you feel kind of dirty and gross.
Yeah.
Like, it's like I thought of it as a comparison where it's like, the first movie is like going into like some like underground London S&M club where you're seeing shit that you never thought you would see, and you're kind of just uncomfortable with the whole thing, and you're always going to remember it because it's burned into your mind. And the sequel is like watching like a soccer mom and her lazy husband try S&M for the first time. It's just like as lame as you think it would be. It's not
soccer
filthy.
Mom and her husband.
Like some
That's
suburban
gross.
housewife and her lazy husband that just watches NFL football on Sunday. They're like, let's try S&M. And that's what you get.
Yeah. The first movie is straight out of Clive Barker's mind, especially because it is based pretty accurately off of his novella.
Well,
And this
it's
one is just trying to find a backstory, but they clearly haven't thought through any of it. Like it's very lazy.
yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
with that,
Yeah. I'll
we'll
start.
we'll get more
I'll get
into
into
it.
that more later because there is some interesting stuff about it,
Okay.
about the kind
So
of
I'll get
backstory of
into
it.
the yeah, I'll get into the gore summary and the gore rating now. So I gave it 3.5 out of 5 gory wieners because there's still some gore in it. Like there is only one scene that I was pretty grossed out by, and then I took off another point 0.5 because there's still like a lot of gore in it, and it's I winced at a lot of it, so I gave a point 0.5 off for that, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. Still
Um,
some hooks and stuff.
yeah, I could maybe even give it a 4, but it was, yeah, 3.5 to 4 out of 5 because I took a full point off for a scene with razor cutting, and that was pretty
Oh yeah,
intense,
that is actually that's a pretty brutal scene. Actually,
right?
that's probably like the best horror scene of the movie is that one part.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
And they do re-show a lot of the gore I had a hard time watching in the first one. So, yeah, 3.5 out of
There's
5 I think
next.
is fair for someone who has a like an aversion to gore like me, but I don't think like if you really hated the gore, like you had a hard time watching the gore from the first one, you're don't even bother with this movie because like it's gonna re-show the gore and it's gonna be a little more gore and it's not even a good story. So like I don't
Exactly.
even I don't suggest this movie to anybody. For people
No,
who
it's
liked the first one or people who disliked the first one, both both groups are not gonna like this movie.
oh, it's so disappointing. It's like explore the
Yeah.
mystery of what's in the cube. Oh, it's tree roots and this stupid matte painting and wobbly walls built out of
Oh
like
yeah. It honestly, no, the
these.
walls didn't even look, because you kept saying paper mache. To
Yeah,
me, it looked like someone printed a wall pattern on like a plastic sheet and then just
yeah,
hung it
yeah.
over something. Because
They
when
got
they
like
pressed
a
on
roll
it,
of
it
laminate.
moved. Yeah,
Oh,
laminate. It looked like it was a piece of laminate moving when they touched the wall. But
so
yeah,
like
anyway, so the full gore summary, the first scene that we see flashbacks to like the Jesus wept scene in the
yeah.
first
We see that
Hellraiser
twice. They show
twice.
it twice in the beginning
They
of the movie.
almost show it a third time, and then they're like, oh, you know what? 3 times might be too much because they show everything leading up to it. Oh my
Oh,
God.
so
And
boring.
so they show all of that stuff, and then there's a razor cutting scene where a guy is like cutting into his body with razors because he sees like maggots coming out of his skin, and he's
Yeah.
cutting into that and like all over his body and like trying to
He,
peel his skin. Like it's really gross.
he
That's a
bleeds a
full one
lot.
off. It's disgusting. Then we see like hooks and skin. We see like skinless people.
Oh, so many
Uh,
skinless
so
people.
many skinless, glistening people.
Yeah. So cheap.
Corpses that have been like sucked dry and stuff. We see a there's like a character that gets turned into a Cenobite, and so you see like
Evil Papa
wires
Smith.
going into his skin and stuff like that.
But that's
You
even lame. It's
see
not even like
it is like it's lame.
it's
Um,
so lame.
I don't know. You see someone's skin get pulled off, which is also pretty lame.
Yeah. You don't want
That's
that
but
to
I
be
took
lame.
no, so it's yeah, this movie is probably yeah, I guess 3.5 out of 5 is fair because there's the full 1 point off and then point 0.5 for kind of everything else, but it's
Yeah.
still everything else is not
It
that
doesn't make you feel
crazy.
gross. You know. That's the
No.
problem. It doesn't make you feel
Yeah, it's like I
dirty.
don't know. Giving
Yeah.
it a 4 out of 5 seems like
A little
I don't
too
know,
tame considering, yeah.
a little too tame considering all the
The
gore in the
Cenobites are
movie,
still
but
pretty, creepy looking. They
yeah,
still look the same. So the
Cenobites still
designs
look pretty good.
are good.
Oh, the scene actually, this can be where the other point 0.5 comes off, because you see the creation of Pinhead, and you see like his face getting sliced into and stuff. So
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
that's a
it's
good
like
point 0.5.
yeah, yeah, that's true. It's like the
Because there are,
dude.
yeah, it's just the whole movie. By the end of the first Hellraiser, you're grossed out. You're kind of like traumatized
Frank
from the
is
first
such a
movie.
creep. He's so creepy in that
It's
movie.
so creepy, and like the actual effort they put into the stop motion for the creating of Frank's corpse is
Yeah.
super cool. Like I actually kind of want to watch that scene again because it was kind
Yeah.
of fun to watch. But yeah, there's nothing like that in this
For
movie.
like a low budget movie, that is like an amazingly impressive special effect. Like that
Yeah.
movie was made with love. It's a very weird thing to say that Hellraiser was made with love, but they put
Well,
in a lot of love into that.
like
Clive Barker's love is weird, but he really puts
exactly. He's passionate about weird shit, but it shows.
yeah. It's the effort is there. It's like this is just like a hollow version where the guy didn't want to put in the same amount of effort.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah. 3.5 out of 5 Gory Wiener. So, it got a 75%, whatever. I think that's 75. You can do the math.
Yeah, you can
Yeah, I
do the
think it's
math.
75. 60. 60. Wait. 70%,
We
I
always
think.
run into trouble when we try to do math on this podcast, Emma. It's
You
never
just
we.
have to multiply it by 2 because if it was out of 10, it would be 7 out of 10.
I
Cause and
see.
then that's 70%. See
You
what I
nailed
mean?
it. You nailed it. Yeah.
70%.
Okay.
So
Yeah. We
70% of
crunched
all Gore
the
Wieners can watch this
numbers.
movie.
It makes sense. But no one should watch this movie because it's a giant pile of crap.
Yeah, basically. But yeah, we'll get into the full detailed summary of this movie now.
Yes,
So this
please
movie takes
take us
takes
back into the
place.
haunting vision of Clive Barker.
Oh, I hope he had nothing to do with this movie because I would be so disappointed
He
if
didn't
someone took
direct
my
or write
vision
it.
and turned it into this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think. Well, again, I'll get into it later.
Okay. So this movie takes place directly after the first Hellraiser, after Kirsty was taken to the hospital, and we do see like a few flashbacks sort of interspersed, well, lots of flashbacks. So we see like the first
Lots.
scene of the movie is the end of the first Hellraiser with the Jesus wept scene, and we at some point see
You see
like the
almost the entire
creation.
ending of the first
Yeah.
Hellraiser. It's like all the Cenobites getting sent back into the box. Like, yeah, the house falling apart. It's almost the entire ending again.
Yeah. We see, yeah, Julia's on her mattress with her like face pulled open. That was pretty
And
gory, but like they don't show much. Well, they show it, but it's sort of in passing.
yeah.
And we also see the creation of Pinhead at one point, but it was like disjointed. It was sort of just thrown in there without much reason
No,
to
it's
be
just the
thrown
very
in.
beginning of the movie. He's just like, hey, here's this dude. Oh, I guess he becomes
I
Pinhead.
guess
The
that
end.
was Pinhead.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the beginning of the movie. Pinhead was like this normal general type
Yeah.
dude, and
It looks like he
he,
was like a British sergeant or something in like,
yeah,
I would say like maybe during like Africa, like when they try to invade, like kill the Zulu warriors and stuff, like
seems
old
something like
England.
that.
And
Yeah. So he
it's
opens
unfortunate.
this box thing, and
The
you just
pleasure
see,
box. Oh,
yeah.
we get the very beginning of the movie. We do get a dub over of the pleasure dealer. What's your pleasure?
Oh my God, the pleasure
He's
dealer
still
guy.
there. We fit him in.
He's still there.
What's your pleasure?
And we see the hooks come out of the wall, and we see them like basically, I don't know, cut
They
his
cut,
face
yeah,
into
they
the,
slice them all up and
and
hammer
they
in nails
put
for
the
some.
hammer, they hammer the nails into his skull and stuff, and so you see how he was created, but you don't really see much of his humanity beforehand. You just, I don't know.
It's
That's
kind of
all.
disappointing after like reading about all the backstory that Clive
I
Barker put
know.
into the Cenobites and
Yeah.
specifically Pinhead and how he's like haunted and his own hell is the fact that he knows he can never feel again, which is very ignored in this movie, and
Very ignored.
and like you really felt that he had like a lot going on and like it was a slow process to become Pinhead. It didn't just like, oh, he opened the box and
Yeah.
then got a bunch of nails hammered into his head, and now he's this dude named Pinhead that talks about Jesus weeping and shit like
Yeah.
that. Like
And it's
you want that slow progression to him becoming the sex weirdo that he is destined to become.
yeah. And it's hard to know what this movie would have been too, because I know the actor that played the dad in the first one was supposed to be in this, but he refused the role because they were going to grossly underpay him. Which, fair enough, dude. You
Hmm.
didn't need this on your resume in any way.
He made the smart.
So he made the smart decision to not be in this movie, but I don't know. It seems like they just kind of made a movie about the characters who were willing to be in the movie. So you got Kirsty as the main character, and then you have Julia comes back in, and Frank makes a small appearance.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's mostly just about what happens to Julia and Kirsty after the first movie is kind of what yeah, it's doing.
Runs through a lot of
So
hallways.
after we see the intro of Pinhead and all the gore from the first movie, we see that Kirsty's still in the hospital and she's being interviewed by Dr. Channard and his assistant Kyle McRae. And she
Kyle
based
McRae?
Kyle McRae. That's his name.
That
You
sounds
always
so.
find out the names. You always find out the names from me.
I know, because well, I don't even think they named that other doctor.
No.
The main
Channard.
doctor's
Well,
name, because he's like
Channard.
the
Oh, yeah,
Chenard
Channard,
or
and then
whatever, but
Channard.
also he's like so cheesy and villainous right away. He's doing his like
Very.
evil man monologue while he's doing brain surgery on a woman, and he's talking about like peeling away the layers of heaven, and
Yes.
now we will become the gods of the world of flesh. It's like,
And the other other nurses and doctors are just standing there like, all right,
oh,
man,
he's doing it again. He always gets all biblical when he does brain surgery. And
doing it
he
again.
just takes like one of those like stick blenders you use for blending up soup, and he just sticks it into the woman's brain, goes, "Blah!" And then that's the end of the surgery. It's like, what the fuck did you do to her?
He's making soup,
I'm going to turn your brain into soup. Immersion blender.
basically.
He uses
Immersion
an
blender.
immersion blender on her brain.
But it didn't have the safety thing on it. It was just the blender
Yeah.
part.
I'm pretty sure that's probably how they made that thing.
Probably.
That
So
doesn't
these
that a
two
doctor.
doctors are interviewing Kirsty, and
Oh,
basically Kirsty.
before the cop like physically attacks her because she's so frazzled, and the police officer's talking to her first, just starts shaking the shit out of her. He's like, I don't
Oh,
want to hear about demons. He's like, what's wrong with you? He's just screaming at her, and she's like clearly very distraught. It's like,
like,
dude,
what are you
maybe if
doing?
you shake the shit out of her, she might respond better. And
Yeah,
also,
maybe talk to her like a person.
yeah, Steve, her boyfriend, he says offhandedly, oh, yeah, we released Steve hours ago, even though he was in the exact same situation that Kirsty was in. And so he just gets to leave because he's the white male, and Kirsty has to be locked up in an insane asylum against her will for
Yeah,
some reason, because she's a woman, I guess. And we
she's a
know how
woman.
hysterical
I
women can
think
be.
I'm going to make the bold assumption that because we find out later that Channard has an obsession with the box,
Yes.
the what's it called? There's a name
Pleasure
for it. The
box.
pleasure box. He has an obsession with it, and when she got to the hospital, she was clutching this box. So I'm gonna assume because she arrived with the box
Yeah,
that he is basically like, oh shit, she knows
yeah.
some shit about this, so I'm gonna keep her here
Pleasure
and
box,
figure it
man.
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. She's yeah, and the boyfriend was conveniently released because he's never seen in the movie once.
No. Just
So
let
they
go. Fuck him.
they question her and she basically just recounts everything. So of course we see all those flashbacks
Right.
and
And
she
then at
ba-
the end of the movie, she throws away the cube, and then the hobo demon comes and flies away with it.
no, the hobo demon gives the box back to her cuz he's like this belongs to you.
Oh, I thought she hucked it in the fire with Steve, and then he turns into a skeleton and flies into the screen or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Because the
Well,
Clive
plot
Barker did
hole.
that with some Greek guy wasted over the weekend together.
That's right. Yeah, so that's a plot hole. I was thinking of the first time she went to the hospital, I guess.
Yeah, the
Um,
first time she went to the hospital. Yeah, so let's just fucking have it. This is different.
anyways,
Fine, fuck it.
giant plot
Nobody cares.
holes.
Nobody
No one
cares.
cares. So, continuing on, Kirsty is basically pleading them to destroy like the bloody mattress that Julia Cotton died on.
Why?
Um,
I don't understand. They make zero explanation as to
yeah,
why the bloody
they.
mattress is important. Like it's just some like it's like for some reason this bloody mattress is a gateway to hell.
So I have an explanation for this, but I don't think Julia would know this. Like, there's no way because, or not Julia. I don't think Kirsty would know
No,
this because Julia
yeah,
would know because she
she wants to
summoned
get
up
it.
Frank accidentally,
Yeah,
but like in the first movie, and so because Frank was trapped in that box in the first one, and he was murdered in that attic, his remnants are still there. So when more blood comes down to him, he can reintegrate
animate.
into him, reanimate into who he was, kind of,
Yeah. And
and
he
with
explains it to Julia well, and it
yeah.
starts accidentally by the dad cutting himself and dropping the blood. So
Exactly.
it's
It's
not like this
done
set up.
properly.
Yeah, it's
But in this movie, so in the last one, Julia, either in the last movie or in the book, because I've read the book and watched Hellraiser, Julia is trapped in the box because the way that Kirsty finds Julia is by hearing Julia screaming, but when she goes towards the screaming, she realizes it's coming out of the box in her dead hands as she's lying on that mattress.
oh okay, yeah. Oh,
So
that makes
she
sense.
is trapped in the box. And so that means basically because her remnants are in that mattress, if blood lands on that, it'll basically reanimate her corpse.
Okay.
So that's how it's possible, but none of that is ever explained, and it should be because it's so vague that it doesn't really make any sense. And Kirsty for sure would not know that's how it works. There's no way. So, anyways,
Yeah, no one has explained like Julia's the only one that has any idea about the box like at all.
yeah.
No other character should have any information about it except that.
Like it should be done by accident again, but
Yeah,
I don't know why it would be because
or
who's gonna
it's
do
like
anything with a gross mattress?
yeah, or like I don't know, like establish like that maybe Frank had a journal and that doctor found it and he read Frank's journal and it explained to him how the process worked. Like at least
Yeah,
something that set up the
something like
fact the doctor
that. Like maybe the mattress is thrown out and then I don't know, someone accidentally cuts themselves while they're like
yeah,
digging in the
like
trash or something, and
yeah,
then
like
that starts
when they're
it.
tossing it out into the dumpster, like a
Yeah.
raccoon gets eaten on it or something, you know?
Yeah, see, like that makes way more sense, but
Yeah.
yeah, this was really stupid. So, anyways, we get a bunch of evil doctor shots on Channard where he's like digging into
Channel.
people's brains and having his evil monologues.
It's always weird to
And
find
then
people.
we find out that Channard is secretly obsessed with, oh, there we go, the lament configuration.
Oh, the
That's
lament.
what it's called. Because he has several other boxes with the similar.
That's weird that you just find out, oh yeah, there's more than one of them. He has three of them. Like they're just
I wonder if
there.
they're just recreations and not the actual one, because
Maybe
I
I
I
guess
would
not.
imagine it's not explained, but we just see them in his office,
Yeah.
and we see that we don't even know that this is his home, by the way. We just see that there's a mattress in his office with blood on it, and it's like, oh, is this his house? I guess they
Okay,
just
yeah,
show up there.
yeah, so he dragged this bloody mattress into his house, and but he also brings an insane person into his house.
Yeah.
So how the fuck did he get that dude out of the hospital? Like, and how is he
Nothing is
calm?
explained.
How is a
Nothing's
guy who thinks
explained.
he's in maggots all over him just like chill? And he's just like, I will behave until I need to be super crazy.
Right? Fuck, it's so stupid. And meanwhile, Kyle, the like other doctor dude, he
Kyle
sneaks
McRae.
into the house. Kyle McRae, he sneaks into his house because he, for some reason, suspects something is weird. Because like after Kirsty is like telling him all this stuff about the mattress, he's like,
Yeah,
"Oh shit! Well, I think Channard's gonna do something with that mattress." So he sneaks into the house just to see if there's something going on, and he conveniently witnesses all this stuff. So
has
basically,
he
what happens
behind a curtain?
is
He's just hiding behind a
yeah,
curtain.
he's just been standing behind a curtain the whole time. And so Channard brings this mental patient in and gets him to sit on this gross mattress, gives
So
him a razor, and then he just starts cutting himself like all over his body. And you see like what he's seeing, what the mental patient is seeing is like maggots coming out of his skin, and so he's just cutting all over. And that scene is so like horrific. It's really nasty. So he's bleeding all over this mattress, and then you just see arms come out of the mattress and like envelop him, and then that's when you're introduced to skinless Julia.
like a
So that's
Ghostbusters when
nice.
Sigourney
Yeah.
Weaver gets attacked in her chair by all the hands and she's taken into the kitchen.
Yeah. And yeah, so Kyle witnesses all of this and then he flees and like goes to tell Kirsty. And
How?
meanwhile, after all this has happened, Kirsty meets a young patient named Tiffany who demonstrates an amazing aptitude for puzzles. She's just sitting in this room like,
Which makes no sense either. It's just like
yeah,
she's
oh,
crazy and good
it's
at doing puzzles.
what's the point of her role in this movie? There's like no
She's so
point.
goddamn annoying. I hate her face. She has a very punchable face. She never says anything for most of the movie, and she's just like, oh, like she's
I
kind of
know,
just
she doesn't say
the whole time.
anything.
And she has
She's
like
supposed to.
an abnormally large jaw. She
You're
has defined.
you're so distracted by people with like irregular facial features.
Yes, it's like I don't know. It's all about jawlines, like because she has like a normal sized chin, but then her jawbones just flare outwards.
Uh, Poor Tiffany.
Oh, Tiffany.
She had a very like 80s vibe to me. I don't know. I could see her in
Oh, yeah.
like Never Ending Story or something.
Yeah, yeah, totally. She could be like, yeah, she could have played the childlike empress with her like 1,000 yard stare. Just,
Yeah, oh she could. Yeah, she'd be really good in that role.
yeah.
But yeah, so she's just this random character, which I think was just one of Channard's victims. Like he fucked up her brain, and now she doesn't really talk. That's my assumption.
Yeah, they show like again later in the movie they show these like little flashbacks of her getting like needles
Yeah.
in her brain, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense. And something happened to her parents in front of her while she had pigtails on. She's wearing this flower dress with pigtails, and it just keeps
She's
showing.
not any younger, but they're trying to make her look like a child. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like yeah, maybe she was supposed to be like younger, I guess, but she just looked exactly the same, but with pigtails
Yeah.
and that blank expression on her face, just like oh, mommy, I got it. I got into your Adderall
Oh,
again.
maybe Channard was like training her to solve these puzzles.
Yeah,
I'm
well,
assuming so that
yeah,
he
he
eventually
probably.
could get into one of them.
Yeah, again, it's not explained, but we just
No.
make up our own
Yeah.
backstory. It's fun. It's a
We're
choose your
making
own
this up. We're giving way too much credit to the story here because we're trying to make sense of things.
because you want to understand what you're watching, but it just doesn't tell
Yeah.
you.
So after this, Kirsty is awakened in her room by a vision of her skinless father who tells her in writing with blood on the wall that he's in hell and he needs help. It was like, I'm in hell, help me, or something,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
written on the wall in blood, and it's like just a skinless person. So that's kind of like a bold assumption to assume that that's her dad because it could be anybody, just no skin.
Yeah, you can't really tell who a person is when they have no skin. It's
Yeah,
difficult, and it's weird because
it's
the
hard.
body disappears, but the blood on the wall stays. It's like
Yeah.
that's a weird choice to make the blood real, the writing blood real, but not the person real. It's just
Yeah. Because
hmm.
how would he get there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was
And
actually
oh no. And meanwhile, in Channard's house, he's being seduced by
his like
Julia.
his Malibu beach house that they rented
Yeah.
for the weekend and were not allowed to put any nails in the wall because there is
There's no
nothing,
art.
just blank white walls
It's like
and two
blank
chairs.
80s white Malibu beach house. Yeah.
He has two
Two
chairs in a
chairs.
room and that's it. And he just has this one room that's completely empty that is filled with corpses. There's my corpse room.
Convenient for corpses. Yeah. So we just see it's almost like a montage, but we see like Julia trying to seduce Channard. She's got no skin and they're like trying to
Oh, and he's
kiss.
into it for some reason. He
He's
loves the bloody
yeah, but he
lips.
doesn't seem like he's into it. He seems disgusted the whole time.
Yeah,
And
he
then
just
he
kind of
gives her like this wrap to put around her body, like the white wrap, and then she puts a dress on top of being wrapped up in fabric. So she's just like a mummy wearing a dress now.
so
And then they
it's so
start kissing and it's like, "Oh, that's better."
and
Now
he's
that I
like
can't
groping her
see you,
boob, which is just like,
which is made
ugh.
100% of muscle.
Yeah, she just has the most jacked muscular breasts that are just like maybe as hard as a rock.
Terrible. So that
Yeah,
happens, and then we
we
just
learned
see
the
like,
female anatomy in Hellraiser too. It's
yeah,
very accurate.
and we see basically the dude is like luring back people that she sucks dry, and that's what that empty room is for. Is just for it's like it's his corpse room. He's
Yeah,
just reserved it for that.
and he keeps the corpses. Like he doesn't even bother to like
Yeah,
bury them or get rid
they're
of
just
them.
hanging around. Yeah,
Yeah, his house would stink. It would smell so bad in there. He would
yeah.
ruin the Malibu beach house. He would never be able to resell it again. It's like getting
No,
that dead fish smell in the vents. You'll never get it out.
no, never. Just it's forever corpse room, corpse house,
Corpse
really.
House. Malibu Corpse House.
So
That's the new Barbie edition.
the new Bobby edition.
And
And so
Malibu Barbie's
then
new beach home, she has a corpse room. Yay!
I don't fully remember why Kirsty and Channard go, or no, Kirsty and McRae, Kyle McRae, why they go to to
Oh,
Channard's
McRae.
house. Do you
Well,
remember?
McRae is just like, yo, I saw some fucked up shit. Like, I saw a lady burst out of a mattress and eat a guy. So I think
Oh,
Chanard's
right.
into some, like, bad shit. You're right. Everything's true.
But it's
Like,
like
I
a
believe you
month's.
now.
It's like a month's worth of corpses in there, though. So
There's
like
so many
so many
bodies in there.
corpses. So did it take them a month to get there? Because now they get there and Julia is like basically fully regenerated except for one spot on her back. So she
Yeah,
kills
which
Kyle McRae. That's the end of Kyle
McRae,
McRae.
poor McRae, he gets a little kissy and then he gets a little stabby in the back of his brain,
Yeah,
which
I
is
thought for
murder.
sure they were gonna make him the love interest for Kirsty, which is good that they didn't because
Yeah,
Kirsty's
oh
like 19 and he looks mid 30s.
man, and also
So
just like the moral implications of a doctor in an insane asylum,
yeah.
like falling in love with one of the mentally unstable patients. That's pretty
Oh
disgusting.
Lord.
Like, ew, you're double her
Yeah.
age and you're her doctor. Like, that's some fucking disgusting Me Too stuff there, pal.
Yep. So yeah, basically McRae is killed, and Kirsty is knocked unconscious,
Oh yeah,
and
oh
then
god, that's right, because stupid Julia has the dumbest dialogue where it's like,
oh
I am
yeah,
the wicked stepmother and the evil queen. Come at me, Julia. Come at me, Kirsty. And then she just
yeah,
like runs at her and she just fucking backhands her in the face and knocks her
and she's
out.
just unconscious, and
Dialogue
Channard
in this movie
always
is so
oh
bad. It's like they tried to copy the lofty dialogue that Clive Barker put in the first one, and it made sense when it's coming from the Cenobites because they are these otherworldly demonic
yeah
entities. They would say fucked up shit like, "Oh, Jesus wept," and your pain will be legendary even in hell. That makes sense when they say it, but when a normal human being says that shit who lives in the modern day, nobody talks like an evil Shakespearean villain in the 1980s. Like, Julia's a modern
no
woman. She shouldn't be
yep
talking about fucking fairy tales and wicked stepmothers. It's like, she's a demonic demon. She's not going to talk about this stupid stuff.
no she doesn't give a shit. It's
Chanard says
yeah.
the dumbest crap too,
I
or it's
was gonna
supposed to be
say,
off. He sounds like an asshole, like a
well, because he
pretentious
makes
prick.
so many like doctor puns or something. Not
Oh,
puns, but he just
they are puns. They
are they
are. End of
puns?
the movie, they start to be punny when he's like just
Oh,
rattling. The doctor is in. Time for your
yeah.
checkup, Christy.
Yes.
Like I am going to have to operate on your terminal illness. Like,
Oh my God. Yeah, no, it's so bad.
so
All
instead
the
of
dialogue.
lofty, terrifying, weird dialogue that Pinhead says, he says stupid doctor puns. That's our villain
It's
of the
like
movie.
they made it's like the dialogue is for a kids movie, except they added the gore in for like an adult movie. So it's like, who is this
That's a good way
for?
to
The
put it.
writing is for kids, and the movie is supposed to be for people who like the first Hellraiser, but
Yeah.
it's not working.
No, it doesn't work. And they say hell so much in the movie too. It's like in the first movie, I don't remember them constantly referencing hell and saying that they were actual demons, and like they I don't think they ever really mention it, but in this movie they are just rattling off the H word all the time, just constantly telling you it's hell. It's like you're in a cube. Is that really hell? Like
Yeah. I don't know. It's just bad.
it's bad.
So now Channard and Julia have kidnapped Tiffany and they force her to unlock the lament configuration so they can enter the labyrinth like world of Pinhead and the Cenobites.
Which makes no sense
Um
because they do it at Chanard's house,
yeah.
but then end up in the insane asylum.
I don't I don't know what's going on in this movie. Nothing's explained.
This movie's
Yeah, so
garbage.
they she figures it out and the Cenobites come in and they were about to grab Tiffany, but then they're just like, oh, she doesn't want this, but I know someone who does. And
Yeah, he's
then
like,
they
she is
go,
the one that brought us here, but not the one who wants the pleasures or the intention.
yeah, exactly.
Pinhead's
It's
very
like,
progressive. He doesn't
oh,
force himself upon little Tiffany. He's like, you
but
are not
he
the
sure
one.
does on
Kirsty.
on Kirsty.
Man, he does not give a
Kirsty
shit.
doesn't
He
want any
immediately
of this shit.
Yeah, he's
It
like,
makes
"Hello,
no
Kirsty,
sense.
we meet again," and he has such like casual. It's like I think his dialogue is also stupid too in this movie.
Yeah,
He talks
it's
too
not
much and
good.
he speaks too much like a normal person. Where he's like, "Hello, Kirsty, it's time for us to have pleasure time together."
Yeah, I know. Yeah, and so they go to Kirsty, and they're just like, "Don't worry, you have all the time in the world to. We have all the time in the
Oh
world
yeah,
to discover your flesh or something."
yeah. That's what he says. That's very Pinhead. When he says that
Yeah,
weird shit, like, yeah, we have eternity to explore your flesh. Please look around. We don't care. We have all the time
yeah,
in the world. Until he gets bored. He's like, now we have to do this. This is the time.
yeah. I'm
Eternity is
bored.
over.
I need, I
It
need
has
to
been
torture
35 minutes.
you.
That is eternity here.
I know. So yeah, they are suddenly in like another dimension after the
This is where we go
Cenobites
to
and
the
Pinhead get there,
matte painting
and
dimension, the Escher painting. Hell is
yes,
an Escher painting, essentially.
yep. And so Julia and Channard are like going into this other dimension as well, and
Walking
Julia seems very
around.
comfortable. No, she knows exactly where to go. She's like, "Oh, follow me."
I'll show you
Um,
what you want to see. La la
and
la.
then Julia like leads them up to the top of the matte painting, which is supposed to be like the top of this cube, and you can see like this huge, um,
They
I don't
always
know,
start in
like
the bottom left corner
labyrinth.
too of the matte painting. Like there's
I know.
different people walking, but there's always two people, and they're always walking from the bottom left of the matte painting. And sometimes it's more zoomed in, and sometimes it's more pulled out. It looks so bad when it's zoomed in, though.
Doesn't
It's
look
like,
great.
this is just a picture,
So you see the Leviathan or whatever
which
it
is
is, like the big
delicious.
triangle thing in the sky,
Yeah, it's
which
just
I
a giant
guess,
spiky
yeah,
triangle with a black
which
light coming out of it.
black light, and whenever it hits his face, he has like flashbacks to all the terrible things he's done, which is just other scenes from the movie that we've already seen before. and and then basically Julia tricks him into becoming a Cenobite, so she like shoves him into this box, and you see wires get pulled across his face and
Dude.
pulled into his skin, and then there's these random like giant worm
goopy
maggot things with
claw fang things that stab into his
yeah,
neck. Like,
they look like tapeworms, like giant tapeworms with like the weird pincher faces, and they
yeah,
just kind of
so
like stab him all over. They go into his arms and stuff, and then he has one giant one that goes into the back of his head,
oh,
and
the
then
one that
that's
goes into his head is so stupid. It's the immersion blender. He gets a big goopy immersion blender in the back of his brain, and it like
yeah,
whose choice was it to have him just like float around like a big stupid rag doll, and he's just
yeah.
like
So this
guided by this big
maggot,
goopy immersion blender arm. Like
yeah.
so
So
it was
this
so
like
lame.
weird tapeworm
Like
thing
this is a
basically
perfect.
is
The
what's
whole
moving
scene is
him around.
yeah, the whole scene, the whole like transformation and his reveal is like a perfect example of less is more. We don't want to see all of these things because everyone like not showing it is far scarier than actually just showing goopy arms stabbing into somebody and then he turns into a stupid leather blue faced guy with a giant slug attached to the back of his head. It's like don't he doesn't have to be that elaborate. You don't have to make him extra goopy to make him like eviler than the other Cenobites. Like all the Cenobites, you understood kind of why they did the things they did to themselves, and you feel that they did it to themselves because they're all seeking pleasure, and their idea
Yeah.
of pleasure is so fucked up that carving themselves up is part of the thing they want to do to themselves. Not that they just got shoved in a box and all this shit got attached to them and that's why they look that way. It's like it's supposed to
Mhm.
be scary because they do all this shit to themselves because they are so demented that that is pleasurable to them. Not that you just get tricked into a weird black box and then a slug attaches to the back of your head.
Yeah.
Freaking lame.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty stupid. I'm not a fan of what they did.
Real lame. Real lame.
Uh,
Like everything that they
so
explain that you think about from the first movie is disappointing. Like everything, like you're like, oh, I wonder what the inside the box is like. Oh, I wonder how they became that way. Oh,
like,
oh,
and
all
it
your
could have been
research
so interesting. Like, I really wish it was done well, but it wasn't. So
there.
I feel like they just kind of I hope, anyways, you could tell me later about the new Hellraiser movie, but I hope that they just ignore the existence of these sequels because they bring nothing to Clive Barker's original story. And his story's fucked up, but it is actually, the way he writes is pretty interesting, and he builds a very, like, it's something you can imagine in your mind, and it is fucked up, but it's in a way that's interesting. It's not
It's
stupid.
unique.
It
It's
all
his vision.
has
Like it is
it's a
a
specific
unique.
vision that
Yeah,
he's thought through, and it has history and it has depth to it. And
yeah.
this has no depth in any way. It's just the surface level things that I think people who don't really understand the first Hellraiser are just trying to use to their advantage to get another movie that makes money.
Yeah, it's like
That's what it feels like.
if like a frat boy made the sequel to Hellraiser, this is what you
This is
get.
it. Yeah.
I liked all the cool leather
So,
stuff and people got cut up by things.
wow. So after Channard gets turned into a Cenobite, Kirsty's in this box with Tiffany. I'm not exactly sure where Tiffany is at this point, but
Tiffany's still
Kirsty
saying nothing.
encounters.
She's just like
She's just
again.
there.
She doesn't react to the Cenobites at all.
No.
Her expression, like when she sees all of these horrible demons, just
Yeah. Just staring 100-mile yard stare. Kirsty encounters Frank in the labyrinth
oh my
in his
gosh,
young self. This scene,
and like his
yeah.
the stupid tables with like the
Yeah.
sensual women under blankets.
This scene is so stupid. So Kirsty walks into this room and she sees Frank, who's like admitted that he basically tricked her by pretending to be her father. But in this scene, you see like there's a table of like lipstick and like all this stuff, and then you hear sounds of moaning women underneath like this translucent white sheet, and they are all on these beds that just kind of come out of the wall, and they're moaning and writhing, and then they go back into the wall.
But they're like big lit. They're lit up by like
They're all lit
halogen
up.
lights. They're bright white cubes that they're on, and they don't
Like,
match the aesthetics of the room at all because they're like these big white plastic cubes that they're on. But they're in this like gothic like stone hellish looking
yeah.
room filled with like a billion candles, and it's like supposed to be really
Looks
haunting. And then you have these
like
stupid
something
white
out of
cubes come
Dracula.
out, and they're like,
It looks like, yeah, like if
"Dude."
this was a scene in Dracula, like that could actually be kind of interesting because,
Yeah,
Dracula likes to feed on ladies, so
yeah.
like those could be like his future victims that are like writhing in
His
pleasure because
brides,
he's
like because he
seduced
has a bunch
them.
of
Yeah,
concubines and stuff.
that could be kind of cool, but like for this, it's super stupid. It looks like something that would be in a really pretentious art gallery where you just have like in an art show and they just kind of like pull
It's just
out,
like a
go
bunch of
in,
assholes sitting around, like, very
smoking a
derivative,
cigarette, like, ooh, this
having a glass
means
of
so
red
many
wine.
things. Yeah. And the next time they come out,
And
they're
they keep
covered in
coming out. There's
blood.
three of them, and they keep coming out in
Yeah.
different orders over and over again. It's like one comes out, two comes out. What's gonna happen next? Oh, one comes
So
out again, and now three
stupid.
come out, and then they all just keep going back out and in. It's just so.
So, and the reason I think they did this, I was explaining this while we were watching the movie. So, in the book, they describe this, where Frank's initial reason for wanting to use the cube, he wanted ultimate pleasure. And his fantasy was to basically just live in eternity on like a carpet of writhing like sexual women who just wanted to fuck him all the
See,
time.
that is
That's
fucked
his
up.
fantasy.
That's
That's
so
something
messed up.
Clive Barker wrote. That's something
Yeah,
Clive Barker wrote. And so
it's like
his hell is basically being in a room with all these like sexually desirable women but
mm,
can never fuck them and they will never be able to because like when you take the fabric off they disappear, so they're
yeah.
like illusions of women. And then yeah, so that was
Yeah.
my
And that idea
guess.
is an amazing idea. That is disturbing if you could like pull that off. But instead they just got
No,
three
they didn't
plastic
pull it
tubes and put
off.
sheets on them.
They
they,
never
did,
pulled it off.
they did not
Yeah,
pull it
like
off.
this could, it would be very hard to pull that off with a
You would need
budget with
you need a
like,
lot of extras, a lot of naked
and
women essentially.
you need an imagination too. You need imagination and you
You
need
need an
creativity.
imagination.
You need
That's what
creativity
this
to
movie,
pull.
this whole movie's lacking.
There's no creativity in any of these shots. So, anyways, that's my guess of why they tried to pull something like this off,
Yeah, that totally
and
makes sense. Because
failed.
Frank, I think, does say something like briefly about how he can never touch the women, and that's why it's his
Yeah,
hell
he
or something.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. But then the
So
whole
yeah,
room burst
then
into flames for some reason.
so what happens is then Julia appears and she basically destroys Frank in revenge for killing her, which
Mhm.
allows Kirsty to escape. And I think she burns basically that the room down, I
Yeah, she
think.
throws like
Like
one thing, and it bursts the whole room into
it bursts
flames.
the whole room into flames. And then Kirsty escapes. And then the next thing that happens is so funny. Like, Julia is chasing after Tiffany and Kirsty, and this
Oh,
vortex opens
uh,
up,
for
and
no
like,
reason.
for
For
no
no reason.
reason.
All of a sudden, this fucking black hole into space just opens up out of a wall.
Yeah. And, oh, it's so weird. Like, okay, so, Julia is holding the puzzle box, like this triangle
Yeah,
puzzle box
yeah,
that she's
yeah.
supposed to use in order to escape.
Which also
Um,
doesn't make sense because Pinhead just like turns the normal cube into this triangle silver
yeah,
thing, and
I
he's
don't
just like,
know.
"Now you are in the box. There is no boxes anymore." And it's like, what does that even mean? It's you have
I
one
don't.
right
It's
there.
just so stupid. So you think that Tiffany is going to grab the box, but she actually just is trying to save Julia. And then when she grabs Julia, Julia's skin falls off, and then she gets sucked in, but her skin is left behind.
And this hilarious little like skinny mannequin's like, "Oh!" like it just gets pulled into the light. And then her skin looks like the villain from Who Framed Roger Rabbit when he gets run over by the steamroller.
Yeah. Yeah. So that happens.
So lame.
Um,
So lame. I think that in there's a nice battle where the paper mache walls rattle because Julia like
yeah.
slams Kirsty into the wall. Just
And then Kirsty and Tiffany reconnect and attempt to escape, but are ambushed by Channard, who has now become a Cenobite. So he's like chasing after them
but this
with
is where
this
it
like
gets
weird maggot
really
arm.
confusing
Yeah.
because they say throughout the whole time they're trying to find a way out. We can't find a way out, and then all of a sudden they just run into the mental hospital, and you're not sure if they're still in the box or not. But then you find out later, no, they just found a way out. Cause no
Yeah.
explanation.
And
They just found a
oh,
way
it's
out.
so
And then Channard
stupid.
in his stupid like slug mixer like can go into a hospital, and like how long is this big slug thing that is attached to you? Like it's so limiting to have this dumb thing on the back of his head that moves him around. Like how the fuck could he get anywhere?
I don't know. It's really weird. I like this part of the movie makes no sense. Like they go to the hospital and like all of the patients suddenly now have hooks in their heads and
They
they
have
just
cubes.
look like
All
like
have a cube as well
they
that
all
they're
have their
playing
own
with. They
cubes
have
and
adorable little hooks in their heads. Like they're
they're
tiny little
tiny
baby hooks that are
and
attached
they're
to
all
the cubes.
smiling. They're all like smiling and happily like looking at the cubes
Yeah,
like what the fuck is happening?
like
And
a
then
little
you
child.
see like Channard comes in, he's like, "Time for your surgery.
Yeah, it's like
I
I,
prognose you with amputation." And like
oh,
one of his like tentacle arms comes up and he's just chopping things away.
oh man. Oh, because like, well, we need to describe the amazing effects for the tentacles because like they come out of he has like slits in his hands and these like little stop motion tentacles come out and they show so much of it. They're, like way
They
too much
shouldn't
stop
have.
motion. Oof. It is real bad. It kind of reminds me of Beetlejuice actually, like the sandworm stop motion when they they almost get eaten by the socky sandworms, but like he has a bunch of them
Oh
that come out of
man.
his hands,
Yeah.
and like at the tips of them, they kind of look like gross little penises, and they have like razor blades that come out of them.
But at least with Beetlejuice, that's a comedy.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine for that to be cheesy because the effects are not supposed to be scary. It's a hilarious slugworm that has like a funny twirly tongue on the end of it. It's supposed to be
Yeah.
cheesy and goofy. It
I
makes sense for
even I have a makeup brush holder that is that black and white worm and it's
all
like yeah,
the
it's like all spiraled together and I have my makeup brushes.
yeah, it's funny because as a child, I never watched the Beetlejuice movie, but I watched the Beetlejuice cartoon so
Oh, I
much.
watched that so
I
much
loved
too.
it.
I was obsessed with the cartoon and I watched the movie. I was a little bit afraid of the scene where they're all sitting in the waiting room with
Oh
like the
yeah, with
dead
all the messed up
people.
faces and stuff.
One day, uh, one day I really want to go as the lady that's she's like the secretary of the waiting room
Yeah.
because she's like all green. I think she used to be a cheerleader or something.
Is
I
she the
don't
one
know
with
what she
with
was.
like
Or not a
track marks
cheerleader.
on her? Like she's like a prom dress. She's wearing like a prom dress.
Prom dress or
Run
something.
over by a car or something.
Something, yeah. She's all green and she has like a purple dress on and yeah, it's like that would be really cool if I could do that one day, but that's a lot of effort. So for
Yeah, that
now
would.
I'll just do Lydia. Lydia's easy.
I
Can do
worked with a
her.
girl who like went full out as one of the people in the waiting room, and she was like she had like tire tracks on her, and she was wearing
Yeah.
this dress, and I was like, holy crap, that's super impressive. She was a huge fan.
Yeah.
She was her and her like partner. They went as the husband and wife, but when they have their like wonky heads, they made like fake wonky
Oh,
heads like, when they
cool.
stretch out their faces and stuff to
I
try to freak
love
them.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a lot of effort. Like
Beetlejuice is a
one
way
day,
better movie than Hellraiser 2, and I would love to keep
oh,
talking about it, but we have to now get back to talking about this
we're
terrible.
almost done. We're almost done. I know I love Beetlejuice, but
I would love to
anyways.
talk about Beetlejuice instead of this movie.
Okay, so the thing that happens next,
Um,
we've talked about the shitty tentacle things that come out of his
Hands
hands.
comes. Yeah.
Um, So the girls flee and they encounter Pinhead and the Cenobites in some
They just run
region
back into the
of the
cube for some
hospital
reason.
into the cube. I don't know. I think they're trying. So one of them is like, wait, we can't leave. We have to actually fix this thing because they've escaped. But clearly, Chanard is like
Yeah.
affecting real world now at
Yeah,
this
the
point.
gateway's open, I
The
guess, is the
gateway's
problem.
open. Again, nothing's explained. We're giving
It's explained.
a lot
This is
of
the new
like
problem.
wiggle room for this.
Yeah.
Um, but this part is so stupid. So they go back in
Oh, this is
and
the worst
they
part.
encounter all they encounter Pinhead and all of the Cenobites, and they're basically like, "Okay, Kirsty, that's it. Your exploration time is over. You will not trick us again." And Kirsty shows Pinhead a photograph of himself before he was transformed.
But
That she
Kirsty
took.
just realizes that this is Pinhead in human form because she looks at the photo and then like she flips the page and sees like a scientific picture of like the sections of the human brain, and she's like, that kind of looks like Pinhead, and there's a photo of a man on the other page. This must be Pinhead when he's a human. There's no writing on it to explain it. Nothing.
No.
She just makes the insane leap of logic that this one photo she randomly finds in this fucking photo album happens to be Pinhead when he was a human. She
Yeah.
has no idea that it's him. She's like, how the hell would you recognize him?
Ugh, I don't know. It doesn't make any
I would have loved it if
sense.
she
This
just
movie
drew a
makes
little
no
pin of
sense.
pins into the guy's head. She's like, oh my god, it's him. Like she draws it on
Yeah,
his face.
she
Like, ooh.
like has to draw the like the sections on his
Yeah.
face.
She's just
It's
like,
him.
ooh. So yes, please carry on
Wow.
with the horror worst, probably the worst scene in the movie. It
This is the
is.
worst. It was like something out of like again out of a kids movie. So basically, she shows him the photo, and then Pinhead gradually remembers that he once was human with humanity, and suddenly they all of the Cenobites just turn back into their human form for some
They'll
reason.
become
And you,
well. They become good guys, and they turn back into their human form when they get killed by the Doctor Chanard because
oh
he.
right, Channard
Yeah,
comes in and he kills them,
it's
and
so
after
lame. Pinhead has like they shouldn't fight each other. It's so lame. Like Pinhead's standing there and he fires his chains at Chanard, and then Chanard cuts them with his penis tentacles, and then he
yeah,
just kills all of the Cenobites from the original movie. All of these very terrifying looking creatures, they just all fucking die within 20 seconds in lame ass ways. Like
yeah,
you think these creatures are immortal or like because they've done so much fucked up stuff to
yeah.
themselves. Like, how can
There's
they
no
die?
way.
What's the concept of death in this world where you can tear yourself into tiny pieces and still be alive?
Right?
But no, just a spike to the throat kills the woman, and then she turns back into a normal person. The fat
Yeah.
guy gets like stabbed by something, turns back into a person. They all die in lame ways. The one with the chattering teeth is apparently a 12-year-old boy, which makes no sense. And then Pinhead turns back into a human before dying because of
It's so
Chanard's
stupid.
Cinewhite
Like,
powers.
and
So
there's no
and he
way
looks
that
so
Channard
lame
could.
too. Pinhead without the makeup, damn, you shouldn't have showed that. He looks like a lame middle-aged man with like a receding
Yeah,
hairline, and he's like it takes away all of the fear from the first movie where they went out of their way to make them so terrifying and so disturbing, and they just like are so thrown away in this movie. It's like so disrespectful to the original idea of these of all the effort they put in the first movie.
like
It's
I want to forget this movie even existed. It doesn't. It's so bad, and I hate gore. So like, the fact that this movie sucks not because of the gore but because of the story is saying a lot. It's saying a
who would have thought
lot
one
coming
day
from the Wiener of Gorehead and the Wiener. What?
one day you would be defending Hellraiser 1. It's like this is a piece of art. This movie that scared the shit out of me. It made you
Yeah, I
feel.
am defending Hellraiser 1. I never thought I'd see the day, but holy shit. So, this shitty scene happens, and
It's terrible.
Channard traps
He
Kirsty
also
and
says a bunch of
Tiffany.
doctor puns while he's doing it. I have to just
Yeah,
put that in. It's
he
so
traps them. They're like, now they're somehow up at like the top of the cube thing again.
oh yeah, they run into the
Um,
matte painting for the 10th time in the movie From the bottom left corner, they're now running up the matte painting to the big triangle
Yeah.
Leviathan thing, which apparently is a being of its own. That's like, I guess, the god of the cube, but none of that is
Yeah.
explained. It's just a triangle.
So we're almost done this shitty
Oh, thank
movie, but
God.
basically, Channard is trying to kill Tiffany and Kirsty, and
Oh,
then randomly we see that Julia shows back up and just starts making out with Channard, and meanwhile, like Tiffany's like hanging off the edge of this
matte
cube
painting.
thing, the matte painting. She's hanging off the matte
Matte
painting.
painting.
And while she's distracted, this part's so stupid. So while Channard is distracted by kissing Julia, he like tries stabbing something, and then like the little stabby knife thing gets stuck in the ground, and
Oh
then
God! Oh God! That's I
right,
forgot. I forgot. Oh no! Oh
um,
no! His
and
dick
then
fingers.
the
Miss
dick
Tiffany.
fingers get stuck in the ground, and then he basically like the little maggot thing attached to his body tries to like pull him up, but because his dick fingers are stuck in the ground, the thing pulls his head off because his dick fingers are holding him into the ground. And yeah, so he gets decapitated by his own self because his own self is too stupid to realize what's happening,
Why
and
wouldn't
he's
your
dead.
hand
So
get ripped off before your freaking head? Like, why is it his head? It makes
his
like,
clearly had a very weak connection between his head and his shoulders.
yeah, clearly. Wow, it's like
he was
such a soft
only
spot.
using he was only using Head and Shoulders and not the neck shampoo because you do need to use head, neck, and shoulders if you want to make sure that connection stays strong.
When you have a giant maggot attached to your head,
Yeah,
you gotta
that's
make
the
sure
only
you.
shampoo you can use.
He's gotta like work out his muscles in the morning. He's like, oh, got to make sure I don't rip off my head.
Yeah, head, neck, and shoulders all the
He's
way.
at like one of those like elderly workout places where they like sit in chairs because they're too old to like do it standing up, and he just has his big maggot head. He's like, "How was your afternoon? Oh, this feels good.
Yeah,
I'm a doctor."
I'm a doctor. They're like, oh, are you? That's cool. So,
Yeah,
anyways, yeah. Basically, Channard is dead for that very stupid reason.
that's such a
And
lame way.
then,
He like essentially kills himself. He's too stupid to like operate, so he just
I
kills
don't get
himself
it.
because his body's too dumb to properly
Oh,
work.
it's so stupid. And then Julia, in quotation marks, is like going to save um, Tiffany, but then you hear Kirsty's voice coming out of Julia, and she's like, "Don't be afraid." And then we're like, "Oh shit!" And then as she's saving Tiffany, her skin comes off, and you realize that somehow Kirsty ran back to get the skin and put it on, and then came back in that
And
like five
perfectly put on.
seconds.
Yeah,
Yeah. So, anyways, that
that's
she
how that can
saves Tiffany, um, and yeah, they killed Channard, and the door to hell is closed, and the girls leave the hospital, and that's it.
somehow they just
But
walk out of the hospital after like these
they just
nasty murders and like everyone's still just chill. It doesn't matter.
yeah, there's a bunch of murders. Like you see all the flowers at the people's beds that have died from the amputation.
God, that's right. They leave flowers
Right.
there, but that makes no
So they're
sense
all
in like
dead.
a hospital. Why would they do that in an insane asylum? Wouldn't the cops be there, like trying to figure out
Yeah,
how all these
that would
people
make
got
more sense
murdered?
if they were
Why they
cops.
had chains in their faces and playing with cubes? Like, I think this
Fuck.
would escalate to a larger situation.
Yeah. Well, they didn't have the budget for that. That's okay.
No, they certainly
So
did not have the budget to even make this movie to begin with.
the way the movie ends is so we go back to Channard's shitty house,
Yeah,
and we see two moving men are removing Dr. Channard's belongings from his house,
oh god,
and one is he sees like the nasty mattress, and the other witnesses a
ice.
mysterious pillar rise from within it, and that's where it ends is when we see all the faces fused to the pillar are like
The
all
Cinnabite
the
faces. But
Cinnabites.
they're
There's
now
like a
Cinnabite.
random tiny skeleton like chained
Oh
to it, and it's
man,
just
the
like,
baby skeleton. It's so tiny. It's smaller than one of their faces. It's just like this little tiny skeleton.
yeah.
And
So
like,
it's like the yeah, it's like the pillar with nails on it from the first movie that's rotating, and at the end it zooms in on a face of the vagrant from the previous film,
the
which
pleasure
ends on
dealer.
him saying, "What's your pleasure, sir?"
It's your
It's like,
pleasure.
oh my god. So that's Hellraiser 2. That's the whole movie. It's terrible.
That
Don't watch it.
movie. Awesome. What a piece of shit. God damn
Yeah.
it. Yeah, so don't watch it. Just never watch it. Please don't even. It's not even like fun bad. It's just a bad movie.
It's just
There's
bad
nothing.
bad. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's bad bad. There's nothing enjoyable
I
about how they messed it up.
I did enjoy the pillar at the end because they had so many shitty things attached to it. Like I just loved seeing a random skeleton just shaking.
It's amazing.
It's like someone just attached a string to it and just went,
There's a guy right below camera just wiggling it.
yeah,
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 it was. Yeah, that movie's super lame, and
terrible.
well, it makes sense that it was super lame. Although it's like this is it's interesting because this movie and Hellraiser One have around the same budget. There's like a $3
Oh
million
no.
budget, and so I think this movie
Wow.
is like a very good example of how you can how you can use a budget very effectively, and then how you can completely waste all of your budget on stupid crap that doesn't matter. Like the first
Yep.
movie, all the money went into like the effects and making the atmosphere creepy, and they understood that they can't have too many characters in the movie because they can't afford it, so they isolate it within this house, and they do a really good job of keeping it very like self-contained, this tiny little package
Yeah,
very neatly
because
presented
they
to
made
you.
the very smart decision to shoot everything in a house.
Yes. But in this movie, they're like, well, it's a sequel, so we have to make it bigger. But the problem is, your budget isn't any bigger. And so I think they just wasted and squandered their money on like building this hospital. Like, there's this elaborate basement where some of the crazy people are kept. Like, didn't need to show
There's
any
no
of that.
point.
No point to
No.
it. There's a shitload of extras in the hospital that there's no point to. Like, you could isolate this movie so much more and then actually put the money into the things that should have the money put into it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. So I guess now, yeah, we're fully just getting into the making of this movie, and
yeah,
you've done a little bit of research on that, so I'll
yeah,
just let you
yeah,
talk.
yeah. So it's just there's not like a lot, but the original the original movie got had a grander idea of what they wanted, but they just ran out of money. I think they just put it into the wrong spots. And so they had to
Yeah.
cut a lot of their ideas. And one of the major subplots that was supposed to be in the movie was exploring Pinhead's backstory. Like there was supposed to be like
Ugh.
a run through of the entire movie showing how Pinhead became Pinhead and
Damn
learning
it.
about his human self, because Clive Barker said the one thing he wanted to do with the sequel was to make sure the audience knew that the Cenobites started as humans, like through their sins and overindulgence in each of their own pleasures and kind of
Yeah.
vices, they become what they look like now in the movie. And so it was supposed to be this exploration of Pinhead as a character and how he became Pinhead. And
Okay.
they don't do any of
Yeah.
that. Instead, all they could afford was that stupid shot at the beginning where he's literally standing there saying nothing and then touches the cube and gets a bunch of nails hammered into his head.
So stupid. Yeah, I know there's a lot of people who I guess it's kind of a debate, I guess, about this movie or about just the Cenobites in general, that a lot of fans don't feel that they need the backstory on these characters. But I personally would find it very interesting just because these people used to have humanity, so it's kind of it would be fascinating to know how they got to such a weird place. You
Yeah.
know, if they started as humans, it's like there's a journey there that could be very interesting to explore. But I
Yeah.
understand some people, that's not the reason they watch these movies. They just watch it because it's spooky and scary and gory. But I don't
And
know.
I can
I
totally
think it could be
understand. Like
cool.
I would have been perfectly fine if they made that type of movie where they didn't explore any of their backstory and they are just these really imposing figures and it's just like a new adventure where someone discovers the box and it's about them being like influenced by this box. And that would have been I would have been fine if there was just a creepy
Yeah.
movie, but this movie chose to try and explore it and they did an awful job. So like you could do a really cool movie where Pinhead is like the movie is like kind of about Pinhead and how he became Pinhead, and that would if you did it right, it could be very fascinating to find out how someone is that twisted or becomes that twisted. But I
Yeah.
could also see it would be a perfectly fine movie if you didn't do any of it and if you just made
Yep.
them scary monsters. But they did neither of those things and did a terrible middle ground, which it would have been better if they didn't put it in. But they had to
Yep.
put it in because their ending was so stupid that they wanted to make them like they tried to like Terminator 2 the Cenobites essentially by making like Arnie's the scary robot that tries to murder Sarah Connor in Terminator 1. And then in Terminator 2, he protects John Connor. And you're like, whoa, the villain's the good guy now. And like, don't do that with the Cenobites. Those guys can't be portrayed as anything positive. Like they do not those things don't have conscience anymore. Like if you
Nope.
hammer nails into your head, tear your throat open, or have fangy teeth and just keep licking your lips like a pedophile, you're not a human anymore.
No.
Like that shouldn't there shouldn't be like, oh, they needed to reawaken their humanity by looking at a photograph.
No,
So
it's not gonna work. It's like I could imagine them remembering. I like my thought would be if they saw a photo of their old self, like they would probably laugh, where it's like,
sure.
yeah, I
Yeah,
remember him. That's not me now. Like,
yeah,
I don't
yeah.
think they don't think they give any shits about who they
No.
previously were. They're so far gone into this weird realm of, like, I don't know,
Pain for
death
pleasure
and
essentially,
pain.
and
And
like
yeah,
their
it's
concept, like they shouldn't be thinking like a normal person where it's like,
no.
oh, I feel bad that I tore that guy into pieces and molested him. It's like they don't care. They're horrible interdimensional monsters, interdimensional perverts. They are
Yeah,
just disgusting.
interdimensional perverts.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's like it's like saying like a serial killer can just feel bad for being a serial killer and he'll stop being a serial killer. Like
Yeah. I'm sure if that's how it worked, there would be a lot less serial killers because, like, oh god, I know this is getting into. I'll try not to go onto too deep of a tangent, but just listening to people, because, like, okay, so Red Letter Media previously, they just recently released something on Jeffrey Dahmer where they're talking about Jeffrey Dahmer and how there's just so many documentaries about him and all this stuff. But listening to some of his interviews, it's like he comes off creepy, but he also comes across as a person who can't control his own inner desires, and he understands that they're not okay. They're
mhm.
bad to murder someone, but he
Yeah.
can't control it. He can't stop himself from doing it at this point. So the only way he knew the only way to stop him was to kill himself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of how I think about it. It's like, I mean, I don't think they give a shit if they murder someone, the Cenobites. It's like
Yeah.
that's so deeply a part of them that they don't want to or know how to stop themselves from doing it.
Yeah, it would be like an addiction. Also, like it's like
Yeah.
a heroin junkie overdoses and dies from heroin not because they want to even keep doing it. It's because they don't have the ability to stop, and the only thing in their mind that they think can give them any sort of happiness is the drug itself. Like the problem is the solution, and that's what addiction is. And so it's like someone just saying it's like, well, just stop doing drugs, just stop being addicted to it. It's fine. All you have to do is stop doing it. It's like that's
Yeah.
It's like that's pretty ignorant to simplify it down that much to say that you can just flip a switch and now you're not an alcoholic, you're not a drug addict. Like that's not like the world would be a lot simpler if you could just choose not to have a vice or do bad things to yourself. It's like human nature to self-destruct. That's part of the quagmire that is humanity. We are self-destructive. Like it's just
Yeah,
part of who
it's
we
true.
are as a species.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why these ideas can be fascinating to explore because as humans, we can understand the complex idea of doing things that are bad for us, but thinking that they're good for us. And that is a very interesting and rich idea to explore. Like
Yeah.
it's very fascinating to see because of like the suffering that comes from it, like the pain that it gives to other people. It's like how it affects yourself, how your life will self-destruct and you will destroy all the good in your life because you think this one thing is the thing that you need. Like that could be something you could explore very well. And like that could be cool if they did that with Pinhead, but instead they don't do any of that. And it's like
They
a
don't do any of it.
yeah,
No,
it's like
yeah, it's a super deep, it's a very, yeah, there's so much potential. I
it
think
was
that's
like yeah,
why people are fascinated by this movie is because of the the idea of it is very interesting and it's weird. It's like fucked up, but
yeah.
I don't
Like
know, like
people
I'm not.
do like S&M. Clive Barker's one of them. So like even if
Oh
we don't
yeah, like
understand it, people do like it for whatever reason.
it's fascinating to me. Yeah, it's weird. I'm not like I personally have no desire to look more into that topic, but it's like
No, I want to
what
watch this on the safety
is
of my couch. I do not want to be in that world. No, thank you.
no, but the fact that it there's a lot of people out there that are into that and some people watch these movies because they are in that world and then there's people like us that just watch it for watching a horror movie and it's a totally different perspective to watch it from, but it's also interesting in a weird, fucked up way. Whenever I describe Hellraiser to people, I'm like, I don't know if I should.
I'm going to come across as a real creep if I explain the whole movie because you're going
I
to look at me and be like, why did you watch that?
it's because I have a podcast, okay? I was forced into it.
Yeah, you can blame me. It's fine.
I do. I blame you.
Yeah, it's very good. You know, I'm the creepy one that forces you to watch these things. 'Cause
Yeah.
I love Hellraiser. I not into any of that stuff, but holy crap, is that movie fascinating and very like it just makes me feel dirty. It makes me feel like someone just I don't know threw a bucket of grease on me or something.
Well, because, like, honestly, the movie itself, it definitely, you don't have to be into that kind of a thing to enjoy the movie because it is, first and foremost, just a horror movie. You know what I mean?
It just
It's
uses the
not,
aspects of
yes. It
dominatrix
just,
S&M whatever to make it scarier, like the most extreme version of what that would be, like the hell version of
oh,
S&M,
yeah.
and that's a
Yeah, no,
creepy
exactly.
thing. That's terrifying.
And they basically, he made, like, the antagonists of the movie. I guess not fully the antagonists. They're kind of
They're just like
they are
beings.
like the looming figures of the
Yeah,
movie that aren't necessarily the antagonist. They sort of what's the word? They facilitate the
yeah.
antagonist's
They're more like
existence.
yeah. They're like creatures almost, like where they're not necessarily good or bad. They just do what they do, and
Yeah.
if you seek them out, they'll be like, "All right, it's game time. You came to us." Like they don't actively pursue people and hunt them down. They just wait in their box so that if someone is like, "Hey, I wonder what the hell S&M is like," they're like, "Well, let us show you."
Well, let me show you the most extreme form of this.
Well, like how you when you explain in the first Hellraiser, how in the book, like when Frank first goes in, where it's like he like every sense is overwhelmed and it's like
Yeah.
unbearable, and then all of a sudden it's nothingness and it's just like a void of emotion, and those extremes would be like if you could portray that in a movie, I don't know how you would, but like that would be really interesting to
Yeah.
to see. Like that would be a creepy concept of like the feeling of everything and then nothing.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite parts of the book because it was described so well. Clive Barker
Mhm.
does a very good job describing what it would be like to relive all of your most pleasurable, painful, sad, just emotionally charged memories. And not only just the visual memory, but the feeling, the taste, the smell, all of it. And then those sensations amplify and then amplify to the point where you want to die is basically the way he described it. And then as soon as it gets to that point, it just goes away, and there's absolutely nothing, no senses, no no vision, no sense of smell, no hearing, no sense of touch. You're just in a void of emptiness, like you yourself don't exist. So it's
Yeah.
like the contrast between those two feelings. The sensation of nothing would feel so good in
Hmm.
comparison, but you at the same time aren't feeling anything. So it's kind of an interesting concept that
Yeah.
that sensation alone is so addictive that it becomes that's I think that's sort of what he's trying to say is what the Cenobites kind of get off on is
Mm.
stuff like that where it's just like extreme 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 and then nothing.
Yeah, like you can't understand what their kink is because they are
You
so
don't
off
understand.
the
Yeah.
spectrum of normal. It's just like,
Yeah.
and that's a cool idea to explore, and it's terrifying to just think about the concept of nothingness. Like you're essentially dead because
Yeah,
if you
exactly.
don't,
Yeah.
you essentially don't exist at that point, other than just being maybe a consciousness possibly in a void of nothingness like that. That idea is scary because we as humans need to feel that we are actual people. It's like, oh my god, I don't know if you've watched uh what is it, it's the HBO show True Detective with Matthew
Yeah.
McConaughey. Matthew McConaughey in that show does such an amazing job of being the most nihilistic dude I have ever seen portrayed in a show. And he has this monologue where he talks about humanity and how we're just like walking piles of goop that think we have an identity, but we are actually like the plague upon the earth that needs to be eradicated. And like we aren't, like we think we're social creatures, but we are just these animals that believe that we are better than what an animal is. And it's just like, and it's like what he just has, like he says it in like the most insane way possible too. Like the words he uses I didn't even know existed until he said them, and they sound like the craziest. He says something like the psychomembrane of the world, and at the end of it Woody Harrelson's just like, okay, we're gonna now. This car is going to be an area of silence, of self-reflection. And in the
Yeah,
interview, he's like,
he's a
yeah,
good balance for that
yeah. He's
character
like,
for
he wouldn't
sure.
say, yeah, he wouldn't say anything, and you'd want him to say something. But then when he does start speaking, you immediately want him to shut the fuck up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
no,
like,
exactly.
that's what they needed in the Hellraiser 2. They needed that person that, like, that is kind of like what Pinhead should be, this, like, insane, nihilistic person, like, with ideas of humanity in the world that are so outside of the spectrum of normalcy that it literally baffles an average person's mind. Like, you can't even you can't get to that point of understanding and at least, like, maybe, like, meeting in a middle ground. There's no middle ground when you
Yeah.
talk to a person like that.
There's no middle ground. Yeah.
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 So unfortunately, yeah. But the other interesting fact, other than the fact that this couldn't afford to do anything, was that Julia is actually she in the Clive Barker's original story is supposed to be the villain through all of the story, through every movie. It's not supposed to be Pinhead. It's supposed to be Julia's slow corruption from her lust that started with Frank.
Oh,
And I think
okay.
like the idea was to kind of like she would be the main antagonist and become like the main Cenobite, I think, because she mentions very briefly in the second movie how she's an agent or works for Leviathan, and she's like she is totally on board with whatever this giant triangle is up to, and she's like the agent of Leviathan, which would be great if they explained any of that in the movie too, because they
Oh my
literally just
god.
say its name and that's fucking it. Like, who gives a shit? What's it doing? It's just firing this black beam out, and it has no agenda that you know of. It doesn't communicate in any way. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't have an agenda. It's not like it's working towards something. It's just, oh, there's a big triangle in the sky. Cool. gives,
Great.
gives
That's
a shit.
nice.
It's like you need.
That's
You
a
need
really
your,
interesting concept. It's a very interesting concept, though. It's just a shame that they made the other movies so shittily.
and that Julia's like, she's like not a complex character in the second movie. She literally calls herself the evil stepmother and the wicked witch, or the evil queen, like a fairy tale,
Yeah.
and she calls what's her name, Snow White. She's like, come at me, Snow White. Like she said before, she backhands her. Like, that is a complex character that is overwhelmed from her lust, and the sin of her punishment is like lust is what is her downfall to becoming a Cenobite. Like, that would be very interesting to explore if like she couldn't even, like, part of her can't control her yearning or something,
Yes, yeah.
and her
That would
slow,
be interesting.
like her descent
But
into madness or something. That would be cool. But instead, unfortunately, Pinhead was very popular, and everyone liked the concept of Pinhead, and so they're like, okay, we'll just make Pinhead the main guy, even though they killed
ugh.
all of them in the second movie.
What's the point? You
It's
could have had Pinhead in there too. You could have had that storyline with Julia being slowly corrupted, but
That would have been
no.
interesting. Like, that could have been a
It would have
series,
been.
but instead,
Yeah.
there's nothing. It's
Great.
super shit. Yeah.
Shame.
It is kind of disappointing, but it's, yeah, they cut out also, I guess, just due to the fact that it was too messed up, which is kind of a bummer too. Like, a lot of the special effects got cut for the American version because they were too gory and violent. Like, apparently Julia had, like, there was like a minute long scene of her resurrecting as well, like, where it's not just, I think, her bursting out of the
Oh,
mattress and that's the end of it, like the fucking dog from Ghostbusters. I think it was more of an elaborate one, kind of like Frank's, where, you
damn
know,
it.
it
That
actually,
would have
yeah, like,
been good.
right, like, and apparently there's other scenes with Pinhead that were a bit longer when he transforms into Pinhead. They like showed someone like slowly hammering all the nails into his head, and kind of like, I guess, a more of a reveal of him becoming it. And so it was, I feel like it was mismanaged, just because the writer is the guy who wrote this is the guy who's written, except for the first one, Clive Barker, I believe he wrote that. He wrote like the next four Hellraiser movies, and he
Oh.
was like, him, Clive Barker, and Tony Bradley, the guy who plays Pinhead. They were all like buddies together, and they all set out to make these movies together. And so it was like, oh, it made sense that the guy who helped write the original movie, or was friends with Clive Barker and helped create the original movie, would take over and make the other ones. But I don't know if it was because he just wasn't experienced, or there's other problems behind like how the money was managed, but it just did not work. Like, even though it was written by a similar person that probably has the similar mindset, it didn't translate at all to the film. Like, maybe the script was a lot better than what the final presentation was, because
Yeah.
I have to imagine that Clive Barker had like a far better vision for what inside the cube would look like, other than
Oh
just
my
three
god.
stupid brick hallways with tree roots coming out of the ceiling and like a random green or red light just shining in through a window. It looked like the
Yep.
set from Labyrinth. Like, I was just
It
waiting for David
did.
Bowie to show up with his giant package and his yoga pants. David Bowie's package would be
Oh.
way more terrifying than anything in this
David
movie.
Bowie's package.
You watch Labyrinth. That is hard to avoid if you've never watched Labyrinth.
Okay.
David Bowie shows
I
up.
watched it as a child, so I wasn't really looking for that. But like, I'm gonna look now.
Someone sent me a photo of it one day at work.
Oh
It's just like,
no.
because I didn't realize they're like, oh yeah, it's like David Bowie's package in Labyrinth. Because I've only seen like little clips of Labyrinth. I've never watched the whole thing, so I didn't really know. I don't really know what it's about. I know there's a baby involved, but they just sent me a photo and he's wearing these like gray yoga pants, and it's just like that's a lot of moose knuckle.
Oh no. Oh, okay, I got you now. I think I know what you're talking about.
Rocking some moose knuckle.
Okay, so you're not okay. You're just specifically talking about his balls.
Yeah.
I was
Sorry, I
picturing
didn't
like
need
a
to
giant.
specify.
Well, like I thought you were just talking about like a giant penis that's like visible in his tight. So I was like, I don't remember that.
Well, no, it's all kind of like mushed together at the front. It's just kind of like,
Okay.
yeah,
Good to know.
just in case. The breakdown of David Bowie's bulge in Labyrinth. This is what
That's
this
how we're
movie.
ending this podcast.
Yeah, this is what the movie's brought me
Do you have
to.
any other
I have
points?
one more fun fact, which was cool, and again, kind of pointless, but the sound that Leviathan makes, it makes like this kind of, well, it makes Morse code, actually, the sound it's making, and the Morse code spells out God.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so, again, that would be a cool idea if, like, they explored the idea that Leviathan is possibly God, this crazy triangle in the sky that has a big black beam. Like, maybe
Yeah.
it did create everything. Who freaking knows? Like, maybe God's a huge pervert. Like God isn't
Who
really
knows?
maybe that good. Maybe God is just like nihilistic and doesn't really give a crap, and it just happened to make humanity, and it's not like it loves us. It's just like
It's just we're
a
here.
being. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, again, that would be cool if they covered any of that stuff, but they don't.
Yeah.
And that's
Sick.
about the best way to end the talk of Hellraiser 2. It's just underwhelming and disappointing.
Yeah. I have written on my notes, there's like a section for outro. I just put no.
It doesn't deserve it.
No. Like my outro for this is just don't watch it. Like avoid it. Thank you for anyone that actually listened to this point of the podcast because hopefully it's more interesting than the actual movie.
I was
And
like
it's about the same length as the movie, so
yeah, watch this. Just listen to this while you're watching it on mute, and you'll get a pretty good feeling of what the movie. You'll probably enjoy
Yeah.
the movie more without any dialogue because you can at least imagine it sounds like the first one.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so on that note, just don't watch this movie, and I guess we'll see you around on our next Gorehead and the Wiener. All right, podcast's over. I don't want to be here anymore.